everybody. It's Kathleen. Welcome to Shining on the Shadows. It's episode 12. So this should be explosive because the title is Deep Divers into the Fraud of Voting Fraud. And so I've got three people on with me. This is Pat Price. He's been on the show before talking about the satanic takeover of the world. And that was a fascinating show. Today, I've got a couple people that are really deep divers. And what I like best about, specifically about Amber Rose, is that she has a podcast called Broad Topics. And she'll tell you where, you can find her. But she is a millennial. She has beautiful purple hair, which I just love that about her. And but she used to be a Democrat. I used to be a Democrat too. I've actually picketed teenage topless juice bars before back in the day. Can you believe it? Picketed log trucks and logs being cut out of the forest. I had issues back in the 70s and 80s. But she's a deep diver. She gets a hold of something. She's like a bulldog, and she'll rip it apart and shred it and get all the details. And I realized just talking to her that she needs to be on the show. So that's Amber Rose of Broad Topics. And then Rob Yachts, he has a longer last name, and he can pronounce it himself, but he shortened it up for us. But he's over on the East Coast, and he's another deep diver. And these are people that are shining on the shadows, right? Bringing us up-to-date information about this voting fraud. I know that Rob is really like living it right now. He's breathing it, living it. He doesn't stop talking about it. So he's got a lot to bring to the table. And then Pat Price, of course, a wealth of knowledge and is got a lot to bring to the table too regarding the voter fraud. So anyway, it's November 15th, 2020, and again, episode 12. And Shining on the Shadows is a live radio broadcast show, and it's coming from the Global Enlightenment Radio Network. And I want to give kudos. If you like this content, please subscribe to Full Spectrum Universe, which is Rob's channel, and Broad Topics, which is Amber's, and then the Global Enlightenment Radio Network, also Soma Fusion Body and Soul. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to be discussing these topics. Now, I have no idea how to start this. This is a huge, huge deal. I just got intel that there's some great things happening, and I know you guys are all bursting on this to get on the scene, but I've got to read this. So I'm going to read this, and then you guys just can go for it. Now, this is from Greg Hunter, the USAWatchdog.com. And this was given to me by Pat Price to go ahead and read, which I think is a good way to just break into this. It's really quite unbelievable. This is the biggest election fraud in the free world in history. Came at it electronically. They came at it with dead people, with mail-out ballots, which weren't legally allowed through the legislature. They came in after Election Day. They were post-dated ballots. There were post-dated ballots, so they appeared legal to tally. The post office was involved. They had whistleblowers come forward to claim their supervisors directed them to post-date ballots after the 3rd. Whistleblowers also came forward from Dominion Software claiming they controlled vote tallies. Republican observers weren't allowed close enough to see what the vote counters were doing. And in several cases, observers were forcibly removed from the premises if they pointed out something which looked suspicious. And eligible ballots were counted. Some ballots were counted multiple times. Poll workers were instructed to backdate absentee ballots, which came in after the election date. Poll workers used false names and birth dates on ballots they filled out on the premises, or allowed non-registered voters who came in to use. They didn't verify signatures or allowed non-matching signature ballots to be counted. Poll workers coached voters to vote for a particular candidate. This is unparalleled in human history. Of course, Greg Hunter, USAWatchdog.com. So with that being said, I want to give Rob, can you please just introduce yourself a little bit and give us a perspective, and then we'll go to Amber.
Sure.
And then come over to Pat, and we'll start in on it.
I am Rob Yox. I am the host of Full Spectrum Universe. We do a lot of different broad topics. One thing that I always pride myself on is I am a historian and a researcher. First and foremost, I am a patriot. I am a person who has, since I started my show, I've gotten a lot of connections through the different channels to get different information about inside things, black ops, conspiracies, all types of stuff. And usually when I bring information to the table, I have vetted it at least 50% of the way, where there is some conclusive evidence that this is actually happening. I have a lot of information on the fraud that is taking place. And while we're here today, what I plan on doing is going through some, maybe not so much timelines, but different instances where there is a harsh reality that this is definitely happening, because I have information from overseas that we're going to get into later. Once we get into establishing what exactly happened during the election. And yeah, I mean, this basically what my point of view is, and I can only keep it on the eye, is that when this all went down, President Trump literally was going to win by such ridiculous margins that they had to use any and every method that they could to fraudulently steal this from him. He has won hands down already, and it will come out, because I know that the Justice Department is on it now, and I have some information that basically shows that this is what happened, and this is something that has been happening for many, many years. So.
Okay, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So much. Okay, so Amber, give us a little background of why you're here and how you got here. And
want me to dive back all the way to BLM when I was out there? Or do you want me to just kind of sum it up a little bit?
Well, we're going to get into BLM because you and I definitely have a passion for that topic. But just for now, I know that I brought you on because when I was talking to you, you know so much about what's going on, and you have looked at the charts, you were bringing up those spikes, you were explaining some of that to me, and then Pat was talking to me about some of that. So if you don't mind, go ahead. And I know that you have broad topics. That's a podcast that you do once a week, but you're going to do it more frequently. Is that right?
Yeah, I recently brought on a partner, so we're going to be each doing our own podcast and then coming on together doing our podcast. What really is interesting about the voter fraud that's going on is that it's something that you see clearly across the board, and you can see that there's a pattern of behavior that has been happening with the voter fraud in every location currently that is in question. You can look at that and then compare it to the over Democratic states like Washington, Oregon, and California, New York. And you can see that they have been Democrat for a very long time. And it kind of correlates in at least Washington and Oregon with the mail-in voting. So the mail-in voting is definitely something that is needing to be investigated more in all the different counties along with Dominion. And then, of course, like you said earlier, people that are dead voting, people's children voting. There's been instances of that. It's all kind of connecting into them losing control and trying to steer the ship back into Democrat. Do you have any?
We're muted.
No, we're not.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, well, so I have kind of a research of history background as well, kind of similar to what Rob was talking about. And I've done, I've used, we talked about it a few episodes ago, the Phoenix journals to get a lot of background information on history. And I'm using what I learned from that in current day to, you know, examine what's happening. And it's not the first time this kind of thing has happened, obviously. The CIA has been using software such as Dominion software to take over countries for decades around the world with phony, you know, elections and things of that nature. So yeah, there's so many things to talk about. I'm just not really sure what to take off exactly at this point and who's going to take off first.
Well, I'm kind of really interested in the fact that there's a 5% lead for Trump with investigation of Dominion software in particular, and there's less than 1% for Biden. There is a highly Democratic lead in the way the votes are leaning. That's the pattern of behavior that I'm talking about. And then in all the different counties, we have people that are blocking the poll watchers, that are being violent. We have evidence of people throwing away ballots. I'm really interested in just talking about the Democratic Party in a whole and how, as a whole, they have been cheating, how they have been trying to take over social media and cheat that way, how they're trying to take over with our youth and cheat that way, how they're physically cheating with the election. It kind of just continues in this perpetual cycle of liberalism, to be honest. And it's happening in a way that they're doing it sneaky and underhanded, and they're getting into the cracks of our society where it's weakest with our children and our elderly. They're going into nursing homes and getting ballots and essentially forcing all of these elderly people that are alone and wanting companionship, acting like they're going to be their friend or help them or whatever the case may be. I've seen videos and it was not very pleasant. The manipulation there is on, you know, maximum skill level. I almost feel like we're at the end of a video game facing the big boss, you know? Like we're just like, everything's coming to light and we're like, kapow, 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 like everywhere around us, we're being attacked as Americans. And the other interesting thing is that there was also ballots coming from China. I have a photo on here. I will have to pull it up a little bit later when somebody else is talking, but there are actual ballots being pulled out of an envelope with a label on it that is a Chinese shipping company. And it is kind of interesting to tie that in with Hunter Biden and all of the stuff with his laptop. When you start to like take a step back and you look at everything as a whole, there's way too many coincidences for it not to be happening.
I completely agree. And just to take a snapshot of what we're talking about, and just to piggyback on what Amber is saying is that if we take Michigan, right, and we're looking at Michigan, in Michigan, I believe that I think they said there was 120 nursing homes within all of Michigan, right? 90% of those nursing homes voted, and actually 90% of 90-year-olds and above voted for Joe Biden. But here's the crazy part: is that they
all the way to 200.
Right, is that they didn't vote down ballot. When you vote, you literally, if you don't know who the people are, there was an obscene statistic, and this is all statistics I'm going to point out right now. There was an obscene, like usually it's like 1 or 2% total for a whole state of how many people don't vote down the ballot. There was literally almost 26% of people who didn't vote down the ballot. Now, if you were in a nursing home and you ran that nursing home, you weren't handing these out. Oh, and that's the other thing. In Michigan, 26,000 residents of nursing homes applied for mail-in ballots at exactly the same time, all across Michigan.
Wasn't
So
that right before the election as well?
what was that?
Wasn't that right before the election as
Yep,
well?
that was 2 days before the
Yeah.
election, or 2 days before they were able to get that vote to them. So here's another statistic on it too, is now with this 26% that didn't vote down ballot, if you were running a nursing home and you had sent in for these mail-in ballots, what would be the easiest way to basically take care of, let's say there's 236 residents in your ballot in your home and you had to get everybody. They weren't even handing them out. They were just doing Biden, 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 and kept going to the next one, next one, next one, so they could get it done in time. Right? I mean, there's so many statistical impossibilities that they've even said that when the votes, well, we all know that they stopped counting votes at 2 o'clock in the morning, right? So at 4 o'clock and President Trump came out at 2:30 and said, "Watch out! At 4 o'clock, they're going to drop all these ballots."
Yes, he did.
It is a statistical impossibility that when the vote curve goes like this, that it goes straight up.
Yeah.
So you're telling me that literally Joe Biden got 77% of Detroit, Michigan, when Barack Obama couldn't even pull 57%, which is a strictly Democratic place. He got more votes than the Golden Boy. Are you kidding?
hmm
That's statistically impossible.
Yeah. That was something that was a very interesting point that I was looking into, was that fact. So I'm really glad that you brought that up, because right now they're trying to say that Sniffy Joe, Creepy Joe, the basement hiding slug that is a now presidential candidate, has more votes and more popularity and more enthusiasm than Obama and Trump and every other president that's ever ran, ever, in the history of America. I do not believe that. Not for 1 second. That is the biggest pile of warm dookie I've ever read in my life. When I read that and I looked up everything, I was shook. I was like, there is no way. Absolutely no way. And the other interesting thing is that the social media and the news hid the laptop scandal so bad that now there's almost 5%, or there's 4 point something percent of Democrats that want to take their vote back. And they feel swindled because they weren't given information to, make a proper vote. That in itself should qualify the vote for a re-election. That's a huge percentage, along with Dominion. This would have been a red landslide.
Absolutely. And there's also, if we go into it, we look at President Trump's actual numbers, right? President Trump went from 7% of the African American vote to 12%. He went from 22% Latino people who are of Latino heritage voting for him to 32, which means that he did better than the last election and still lost.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
But he won the last election. There's a lot of fraud going on there. And I mean, there's so many different things that we could look at that it's obscene. There was in Michigan, there was one county who had 230 signed affidavit, which means that if you lie on an affidavit, you're running the risk of being in perjury. And perjury is putting you in prison for up to 5 to 10 years. In one county, there was 230 people who came out and said that there was things that were going on, like they were taking ballots and they were literally rerunning the ballots. They would run them once, they'd run them twice, and that was batches of 50 to 60 ballots at a time.
Yeah, no, there's so many stories going on about that in particular, and there's actual videos of them being in the poll area, marking the ballots themselves. And I saw this one video of this man who was literally flipping off the ballot. He was so angry and crinkling it up, going oh, and throwing it. I was like, okay, so now we have a whole bunch of toddlers and they're volunteering to count the ballots. Great. Can we have a mental health check, please? They need to, in my opinion, especially when it's something so heated, have a mental health check or evaluation, or at least check their social medias before they let them come in and do that, especially like the political atmosphere this year and with everything going on. You would have thought that upholding the integrity of the American election and the vote of the people and your voice would have been priority. You muzzled us, you took away our rights, you made people close their businesses, you took school away from parents, so now everyone's ripping out their dang hairs. That's why I'm in this position and doing what I'm doing now, because I'm a fed up mother. And then you want to add all the other social issues, and then on top of that be like, oh yeah, by the way, your vote doesn't matter and we like to cheat. Awesome. It's just going to be a shitstorm. Excuse my language.
No,
It already is
I totally agree with that too. And they've already found, let's go to Dominion a little bit. They've already found 6,000 votes that were literally
For Trump.
they were fraudulent. They flipped them towards Trump, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's 46 counties in all of Wisconsin, and they used it, or is it Michigan? I forget, but they used it in every county. That's
Yep.
that's the same system that is used in 26 states, including the 7 battleground states that we are talking about today. Now, Dominion is owned by Nancy Pelosi's husband. Also,
Oh yeah, I read
Joe
that.
Biden has come out on TV with a Freudian slip saying we've built the largest fraud network that there is to date.
Oh no, don't you know that's AI? Don't you know that's like special intelligence, and it's been proven false? I was fact checked on that, and it's artificial intelligence.
No, well,
Sorry.
I have a story that President Trump has. See, Dominion is all over. It's a world type of business. It's everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Everywhere.
So
Yep.
they have a hub in Italy, and it's been passed down through the chains of the people that I know. And this is some of the news that I wanted to get into, but and I've verified this about 60% of the way. So if I'm wrong, I might be wrong, but it's credible where I got it from. I can't
Yes.
disclose who that is because that would be giving up some. I swore to secrecy who they were, but in Italy is where Dominion has a hub. What they do is all the information from the election goes to Italy, and then it goes to Germany, and in Germany, what the president did was we have, of course, bases in all these places. So there's a company that's a subsidiary company of Dominion called Sickle, SCYTL, a Sitco, whatever the name is. The U.S. Armed Forces, the Army, went into this German facility that was a warehouse that stored hard drives that was literally storing the information on the U.S. election. And the U.S. Army, without the cooperation of the CIA, because we can't trust the alphabet companies at all, they went into this warehouse with these hard drives and found the information that 4 million votes had been changed from President Trump to Joe Biden. So that's actually breaking news, and you're not going to hear about that on the news, but that's the information I have, and it is a credible source, and it's factual. So there is going to be a day in the Supreme Court where this all comes out. So everybody will be hearing about this probably with it before December 18th when they certify the vote. But that is something that not a lot of people knew about. I saw it, I've heard it, I've vetted it, and it is true.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. I'm in a lot of groups like on Facebook. So Stop the Steal, that has like over 250,000 members. There's a lot of different groups on there that are growing every day. People are outraged and sharing information. It is the information age. Like they really messed up by giving us a bunch of free time where we got to collect unemployment and have access to the internet where we can get all this information and share it. So the whole key thing that I find interesting when you look into that is that they talk about the digital soldiers and the people that are going to be fighting the real war, and it really is going to be here online. All of this information that CNN, ABC, and whatnot are trying to keep from the American people, you can go on any social media site and find it. And it's beautiful.
Well, they do say that the pen is mightier than the sword, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, and we're going to have the opportunity, like you said, Amber, So, Rob, I just wanted to add, I found that same information about Dominion and that our votes were actually being counted overseas. And I found that on a website called whatdoesitmean.com. I just came across it today. So if anybody wants to look that up, you can read it yourself. There's some references, some links that you can get to. One of the things that I found very fascinating was that in conjunction with that, in 2018, I believe it was, President Trump had an executive order which basically was to prevent fraud in an election by a foreign entity. And so this falls right in that trap. And so if this is all true, and it sure seems like it is, we're going to definitely see some big results, and a lot of people that are involved in this fraud are going to be outed, and hopefully, justice will prevail. Now, with that being said, our justice system is pretty damn corrupt, as we all know. And so, we're just going to kind of be on pins and needles here, I guess, for a while, just to see what happens.
Well, we're going to be pins and needles no matter what happens, essentially, because right now we're between a rock and a hard place. So if Trump wins, the Trump supporters are happy. If Biden wins, then the Trump supporters aren't happy. And right now we kind of have a ticking time bomb, not with the Trump supporters, but I say that first because the mainstream media paints them with such a nasty color. Right now we have Antifa, BLM literally rioting in the streets with Biden currently winning, right? They are rioting in the streets. They are literally beating people. They are doing the things that they were doing before while they were complaining that Trump was in office. And now we have them getting upset that we are even trying to pull there was fraud thing after we had Russiagate for 4 years. There's nothing, more, I guess, feeling like home, like the left being hypocritical. And they're mad that we're wanting a recount. So the moment that this comes out and everything is revealed about the fraud and all of that, the left is not going to believe it because of the media and because they're not going to report it. So they're going to riot, and it's going to be, I feel like, 10 times worse. And I feel like after December 18th is when that is probably going to happen. So I'm glad that you brought that date up earlier.
Well, another thing that people don't realize is that before the election, if you don't think that President Trump knew that this was going to happen, you got to be out of your mind. He's been warning us about it for months. And from what I understand, he has, and a lot of us have seen the same thing about a watermark on the ballots. They haven't explored this fully yet. All I know is that there is an elite group of Coast Guard, or I apologize, National Guard, that is literally taking to as many ballots as they can per day for this watermark. That was part of the reason why Amy Coney Barrett was put into office, was she signed a non-disclosure agreement that this watermark is proof of that. And in the coming days, when it hits the Supreme Court, we'll also find out that she knew about it the whole time and signed that into action. So, I mean, there's a day of reckoning coming, and it's going to get really, really nasty after that.
Well, what's interesting about Amy and I don't remember the other one's name, but he actually appointed 2 this year that agreed or helped resolve the Gore issue for the first event in our time where there was fraud or a miscount. So it's really interesting that he thought ahead. Oh, Judge Elise, that he thought ahead that far in advance to do that. I don't feel like it's a coincidence that they both worked on the same thing.
Well, the other portion of that is that, like I said, if you don't think that he was planning for this, he is literally exposing the deep state for what they truly are. And that was his purpose. Even if he doesn't make it into office, he has made sure that we can have free and fair elections from this point forward. And I talked to a lot of different patriots, and they, or even people that aren't patriots. I talked to some Democrats too in my family, and they still don't have they have a bad taste in their mouth because of this election, because they can't trust what these votes, if they were counted properly. Transparency is everything, and that has to do with every form of government. And as little by little leading up to this point, we haven't been able to really trust any of these groups like the CIA, the FBI, these alphabet agencies that literally have no interest to help the American people, only to do power grabs and to make people rich within those systems. And it's truly disheartening. I think that, Stephen Ray or whatever, FBI Director Ray should be fired. I think that he needs to go. I mean, you talk about a lot of people. I think there's a lot of people that need to be fired because their constituents are not their first priority. So,
Yeah. Can I jump in for just a minute?
go ahead, man.
Yeah. So, we talk a lot about the left and the right. And, as we can see right now, the people on the left, the Democrats, progressives, the liberals, the leftists, whatever you want to call them, the anarchists. I mean, there's a lot of names, a lot of labels. They're really kind of the useful idiots, at this point in time. And but you got to remember, and I'm sure we can all agree on this, there's a lot of people that are on the right that are just as dirty as those that are on the left, politically speaking. And so, I really want to caution people to not be so zeroed in on the left versus the right kind of a thing, because really it's an up versus the down. It's the elites, the higher echelon of people. Most of them, we don't even know their names. Their families that have been in power globally for centuries. And they're using the governments, the politicians, the corporations as their pawns to play their little game. And, one of the things that we probably don't have time to even talk about is the big global reset that we keep hearing about. And this election, I believe, ties right into that, as well as a few other things.
Why don't you tell us about that a little bit?
About the
Yeah,
Great Reset?
talk about it a little bit.
Well, so, everybody's heard of the New World Order, the global one world government, and that kind of thing. And, there really is a concerted effort to bring in a dominant global government. And, our America is kind of the last domino to fall, if you will. And the big thing that's propping us up right now has been the strength of our dollar, and our dollar being used as a reserve currency around the world. And they're working to take that out. And they want to institute basically a digital dollar. It's not a cryptocurrency. People get kind of confused about that. It's because cryptos in general are decentralized, whereas the digital currency will be centralized, just like our dollar is right now. It's totally controllable. If they want more, they'll print more. Just add another zero in a computer, which isn't good because it takes away the value of our dollar. It makes it look like prices are going up, but they're really not. They're not worth as much as they were they're worth more because our dollar is worth less. So one of the things they're trying to do is they're trying, in conjunction with controlling the global currency, is take away ownership of property from people, take away assets, put you into a socialized kind of a situation where you have, a guaranteed income every month. You don't get to choose where you live. You don't get to choose where you work. You don't get to choose a lot of things. You can only have maybe one child. So if you want to see what they have in store for us, just look at China. China's a really good example.
Yeah, I talk about China a lot. A lot. I love that you brought that up. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, no,
Forgot my mic was on.
That's okay.
Well,
Yeah.
just to piggyback off what you're saying, if you want to take another model of this, let's look at the EU, right? If we look at these families, like, just to piggyback off what you're saying, in Europe, it's the Rothschilds, and George Soros has a hand in it as well. They manipulate the banks, and if we look at 1939 Germany, it's very indicative of what we are looking at right now, with this liberalism that literally let the brown shirts come in and take over everything because people were so sick of drugs. I'm speaking of Germany too, with homosexuality in the streets. This is, now it's more there is a bigger acceptance of that kind of stuff. And it's funny that the right side, not to talk right and left, but the right side has moved forward in that way, which is very, very good for societal norms. But if we look at the EU, what Hitler tried to do with bullets, Angela Merkel did with a pen. She literally took all these destabilized dollars, which is mostly in Eastern Europe, and took France, Italy, Germany, and stabilized those dollars with a European currency, which is what the EU is. And one of the main reasons why England did not want to take part in that is because they knew that their dollar would lose value in the long run, because the franc, the mark, all of those were literally compensating for these socialistic failed governments in Eastern Europe. And now it's all even killed. But like I said, they were smart enough to do it with the guise of a global market. And if you look at things like the Rockefeller Foundation, they have plans for this. They have plans for pandemics. It's called Lockstep. Okay, the Lockstep documents. It shows you their projected plan going further into the future. Also, if you look into the United Nations, which is built off of the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds funding the whole thing, and George Soros is literally a lieutenant with Bill Gates as well. And this is going into some real conspiracy theory, which is actually fact. But what they have is they call it the Save Cities Initiative. And Save Cities Initiative is where they take out your police force, which is happening right now, and they're installing blue helmets into your cities. And then, you've seen a lot of cities in America say, hey, look, we can't handle this anymore. Why don't we have the UN step in? Which is also where the dictation of the WHO comes in, and the dictation of the World Trade Organization. These certain types of archetypes they're that these governors and mayors are pushing in these cities are to literally get us centralized into this big conglomerate of countries to it's not going to destabilize us, but there will be a tremendous pushback if we head in that direction.
Well, it's the UN. It's interesting you bring them up. It's one of the reasons why I believe that the UN hasn't stepped in China yet. They're saying that there's not a genocide going on in China because they are doing it a little bit smarter for the 21st century, and they are wiping out an entire race or races of people by sterilizing them mandatorily. And they're trying to say that that does not qualify for mass genocide, which it's really interesting that you brought them up, because I do also agree with you that they are tied in with the European EU and what they're trying to do here in the United States. George Soros, I feel, is a very huge part of this. He was in Nazi Germany and actually got his start by pulling the wool over Jewish people's eyes and actually telling them that, oh, I'm going to take you to safety. And then, oh, plot twist, no, I'm taking you to the Nazis and I'm getting some coin. And he also got to watch the rise of Antifa in Nazi Germany and got to see how Antifa was, oh, okay, people are going to fall behind this because anti-fascism, it's a good movement. They're against Hitler. They're against this. That's good. And I feel like he brought that over here to America as a plan, a well thought out and intricate plan with the other elites that are here in America to actually destabilize our country and get us to exactly where we are right now.
If you look at a fascist society, what they try and do is they try and literally segregate the individual, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we look at BLM and Antifa, they have this rhetoric that's on their homepages saying that we want to literally break up the modern family.
Yeah,
and in
they
that
tell you.
Exactly. In that motion, they're separating you in that way. It's the same way. They want to burn the system down. Because
yeah, but everyone's so dumbed down.
Right. When a power vacuum is
believe
created,
it.
who's coming in? The dictator going to tell you what to do, because we're going to be like, what do we do now? What do we do now? So
Yeah, we have a sheepish society, so of course they're going to look for somebody to lead.
A victim mentality. And that's also
Yeah.
part of the victim mentality of it all.
They haven't systematically set up racism. They're systematically set up idiocracy and the loss of common sense
It's also
and the loss of free thought.
It's also identity politics too, which is what they play into these things. And it's funny
Yup.
because a lot of this, there are moderate Democrats, and I stand with those people because if I have to sit here and classify myself, I am a patriot, right? So if I
Yeah.
felt that the Republican Party or the conservatives were doing the same things that the left was doing right now, I'd call them out.
Oh yeah.
If I have no political affiliation. I am with the conservatives now because they are constitutionalists. The
Yep.
Constitution is the most important document. And I actually did a show the other day, and a woman said to me that the Constitution wasn't written for everybody. And I had to tell her that that's what the amendments for are in the Constitution, is to keep it with the times. And if you don't
Hmm.
recognize that, then you need to do your research on history, and you need to figure out what exactly it is you're talking about. There are bad elements in every societal norm. There's always a bad corruption. There's always a bad side to every side that you look at. It's called the duality of man. It'll never be done. There's always a good versus evil. That's how we coexist with each other. There has to be an
Hmm.
opposition that you're fighting against to bring people together. It's always the case, no matter what time in history you're talking about.
Well, to go back to what we were talking about earlier, we're coming into the age of Aquarius. And the age of Aquarius is coming into 2020. And there's literally, I think there's 6 planets that are also coming into the age of Aquarius, which is something that only happens every 26 years. And 2020 is a year of perfect sight and perfect vision, and bringing lightness to lightness to dark areas, and unpacking that baggage that we have here as a collective. And the age of Aquarius is lining up with 2020 because it's also about that. It's about ending corruption in religion and control in religion. It's about ending that with our government, with everything in our society. So everything that's happening right now is essentially we're unpacking our shadow work right now as a planet. So all of this nonsense, the save the children, the human trafficking, the sex trafficking, there's 43 point something million slaves on the planet right now. Currently, right now in 2020, 1 in 4 of those are children. It's unbelievable to me that we were blinded for so long about all of that stuff. But if you look at the media, you look at Disney, you look at movies, you look at the government, you look at everything going on, and they like to keep us in the dark about stuff, but it's not happening anymore. So once the age of Aquarius starts, which is supposed to be December 21st, that's when the shift is happening. So I believe the election is completely tied in, because we find out possibly on the 18th of December, and then the 21st is when all of this happens. So it's not a coincidence, in my opinion. And we're going into an age where we possibly don't have to have that double-edged sword anymore.
That's a very, very good point, and I believe in that as well. I've read a little bit about that myself. I mean, Kathleen, I want to hear what you think about this. You've been very
Yes.
quiet, and I know that you have. Now that you've heard all this information, what do you think?
Your 2 cents.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for being on the show. I just like hearing people's different perspectives. Just as the show, I was getting to prepare for the show, I was getting some intel. I've got a buddy that has communication with the military, and his buddies in military tell him stuff. So, but so they wholeheartedly believe that this whole election is like a military sting. It's a military operation, and that President Trump is so many steps ahead of him, apparently, and that we don't need to really get into becoming too upset about things, and we just need to stay calm. And I don't know if that's just like some people say that's this cues way of, kind of putting people, lulling them into a safe zone. But they really do. My buddy really believes that that's what's going on, and that it's a military intelligence operation, and there's some different radio YouTubes that are talking about it, and so I'm just holding out that there is a watermark, that they do know which ballots are good and which ballots aren't, and that I believe, personally, that I think the new governor of Washington should be culped, and that the same kind of fraud was used in any state that it could be, and that Lauren Culp should be our governor. And it was kind of blindsided me in a way. I was watching BLM Antifa so closely, and the riots and the looting and all the damage they were doing nightly, going to Vancouver and seeing the damage myself, and just experiencing some of these things. I know it's all tied in. BLM Antifa seem to continue on marching a tune. I mean, they've adjusted. I saw it, and I'm going to talk about it because I think it's part of the Great Awakening. There were pictures in Portland right after the election. A new band of Blantifa showed up. They had black slacks and the shoes were kind of the same, and they had the black umbrellas were back. And I think they've got agents out there that are getting moved around, and different things are being set up. I think that the media has a great way of convincing the average person that's not getting into this. Believe me, I'm on the outskirts. That's why I've got you guys on here.
Well, I can confirm what you're saying, because I would see the same people up in Seattle that I would see in Portland.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like that people are very concerned, and the average person out there thinks, oh my gosh, how is this happening? Biden's gonna become our president. And for a while there, I was thinking, gosh, I needed to hear a lot of different information, because I was starting to think, oh my gosh, how did a man who apparently has got millions of people out voting, and the most patriotic support I've ever seen in my entire life. Of course, I was little tiny when Kennedy, I guess, was on the scene. But the most patriotism in history, and the other guy, the communist guy, gets it. The guy that's for China, I don't get it. I mean, it just seems so odd, and it blindsided a bunch of people. And of course, we've got people here that have been my friends that I've known in town, and they're so happy Biden's the winner. They don't care if he cheated. They don't care how many people got murdered or were devastated, their careers, or their careers would be devastated, or however they got to this lying, cheating, drug addict, stealing, Adderall ridden, society that thinks, oh yeah, we can get the president in here by lying, stealing, and cheating, and being a bunch of drug addicts and pedophiles, and and like Pat was saying, a vote for Biden is a vote for China, and I think most people understand that. But here we are.
Well, I mean, he has his sign,
to prove that Trump really did win. Anyway, that's my take.
Well, just to piggyback off what you're saying with these agents that are a part of this kind of like this Antifa movement, if you look at the assassination attempt or the kidnapping of Governor Whitmer, right? Basically, what they found out when they started investigating was that the 6 gentlemen that were a part of that were actually coming to a source, and the source was an FBI agent or an FBI or somebody who was basically giving intel to the FBI at that moment. So there is this gap that there is this, these organizations are a part of this, much to what people don't realize. And another thing I wanted to talk about was that when we see the news, right? Of course, all mainstream media is trash, But what they try and do is they try and set up what's called controlled opposition. So no matter which side of the line you're on, you feel like you have your avenue where you get your info from. So Fox News is controlled opposition because when it came down to it, there was MSNBC, CNN, CBS, ABC. They all started calling specific states, right? Fox News exposed itself when it called Arizona, when the count in Arizona is still not done. They called it right away. So therefore, we now know that that's controlled opposition. And what that means to people is that you need to go out and do your own research to get your own information because you can't trust anybody. You can't trust anybody. Now they have Newsmax and OAN or OAN,
Hmm.
whatever it may be. I still don't trust that just because of everything that I've seen so far. I was an avid into Fox News, but now once they've exposed themselves, so this is the system that they're setting up, and they want to do that because now they control both sides of the board. So you feel like you have a free will and free choice, when really you don't. You're a slave to the system.
That's what they do in China with the internet censorship. So
Exactly right.
that's something I've talked about a lot, is how we can look at China and see how they have been slowly implementing everything here in the United States, and the slow trickle in over the past, I don't know, 5 to 8 years or so of the internet censorship and the narrative control and the in-your-face educational bias for our children. It is almost terrifying how they have crept into every little crack that we had as a society.
Yeah, well, look at in America with social media. If you watch YouTube and anything that has to do with supporting Trump and looking into the fraud, there's a little disclaimer there that explains that, you know, this is discredited or this isn't true or whatever. And check out Google for more
Oh,
information.
God.
You know, and same thing with Twitter. You look at any tweet from the president, and there's going to be something on there, you know, about how that's not been proven or whatever.
Yep.
So, I mean, the same techniques are being used, maybe in a little different fashion, but we're seeing it, and it's just an amplification of what the network news is doing. I mean, like Kathleen was saying, there's so many people that watch the network news and they believe every word they hear. Maybe there's more now who are starting to question, and I hope that's true, but that there's just so many people. I mean, I know people who have their television on almost 24/7. They leave the room or they leave the house and they leave their TV on. They come home and it's still on, and they just start listening to it with whatever they're doing. And it's such propaganda. It's I mean, it makes the Soviet Union propaganda look like, you know, nothing. Um, they've really perfected how to put out propaganda and to brainwash people, and we're living it right now.
Yeah, hence the justification of committing crimes, being out on the streets, actually harassing older people, adult, like handicapped people or children. This is some of the BLM Antifa who are representing, I guess, a liberal, stance. Of course, they're taking it even further, but I mean, and then people in our neighborhood, in the community, they have businesses, they're liberal, they're progressive, they're socialists, and they're coming on my Facebook page and commenting, ha ha ha, Trump's so loser, and you're just in a fantasy land, Kathleen, and you're ha ha ha, he's out. And I don't understand how they can morally, ethically be this way, have this position, knowing that they got there by lying, stealing, and committing crimes and fashioning themselves with these satanic conspiracies.
Well, because it doesn't matter to them at all. Like, you can't look at them and what they're doing and think of it from your point of view. Do you know what I mean? It's not something that a normal person's going to identify as or even act like.
Right. You see, when I remember, you were supportive of the BLM. You didn't understand, and then you started researching it and you understood, and then now here you are, and
Mm-hmm.
which it's a huge deal to be a millennial that is a conservative. You are the most targeted of all.
Yeah.
Besides a young millennial African American male, cis male, is
Yeah.
probably maybe number one targeted.
Well, what got me started with BLM was that I supported the idea that Black Lives Matter, that everybody's life mattered. And like, that is what into it was that I thought it was this beautiful civil right movement, and it turned into this racist, hypocritical pile of hot dookie that was the most hateful racist thing I've ever experienced in my life.
I know you
And it
went to
really,
Seattle. You went out to the streets just like I do to get intel.
mhm.
I really respect you.
Yeah,
You
I
went to
was
Seattle,
actually,
hang out there, and but we're trying to tell you folks, anybody that's listening, it's not from America, that she's been out, I've been out on the streets, seeing firsthand kind of this residual leftover Marxist socialism that really renders down into a lot of this hateful sinut, or whatever you want to call it, suet, um, fat that's crusted over, people, and it's toxic. I hate it.
it's toxic, toxic, oh, what is the word? Dang it, I just had it. Narcissistic and I guess manipulative.
Well, let's look
I
at
don't
how
feel
they
like that's
got
right.
there to begin with, right? So you're growing up. The first thing you're told while going through school is that you have to get a college education, right?
Yep.
So you have to get that college education to make something of yourself. What they did was they systematically went after education. They went into these schools, they started switching out teachers that were radicalizing children. When I mean children, I'm talking about from first grade all the way to 12th grade. You are taught that America has done terrible things to get where it is. Therefore, when you get to college, now the actual programming begins where they start to socially, they instill this social ideology by these professors who are so radical that they say that that basically come out with statements that we all have seen where heterosexual white males, they have to be enslaved or taken out of the country. So and these extreme views, and they let these people stay in power inside of these schools. So when these people come out of school, they have these specific types of this archetype of person in power in the country with senators, mayors, governors, local representatives. So they just get right on the bandwagon. And honestly, my point of view, I think that these radicalizations of these kids, it happens in school, but I really think that they're almost some of them now after this election are starting to see that this is a radicalization of themselves and that they're
Yep.
taking that step back because if I mean, I know that there's a lot of social media stuff out there that you can get caught up in, but the people are starting to realize that it's not over and done with. We can fight back. There's Parlor, there's Rumble, there's BitChute. You can get off these big platforms and take these people out. You know,
Well, don't sorry to interrupt, but the only problem with getting off the big platforms though is how are you going to convert anybody that is a liberal or a Democrat if you are on a mostly Republican conservative social media?
well, you have to take the each one teach one. You have to grab people in the streets. There is work to be done, and you're right. I'm not saying get off of those completely. I'm saying don't focus on them as much. Go to these other places where you're with like-minded people to expand your mind. But you're absolutely, you are right about that. It's hard to get these people to switch over, but then there comes to the fact where there's certain people who don't want to. They like being like that, and that's where the light and dark comes in. With this, this it's a satanic force of darkness that's just literally taking people's souls and enslaving them to this system that's so broken on their side of the board. And but they like that now. They're used to it. It's conditioning. You know what I mean?
Yes, conditioning.
So
100%.
you could scream your head off for 7 hours and not reach anybody sometimes, but you can't give up, of course. But some of these people don't want to learn this stuff, which is disheartening, because if you are an adult, you should always be learning and have an open mind to anything.
Yeah.
But
Well, there's an old saying.
What you said, Rob, can I add something real quick? Sorry
Yeah.
about that. So I don't know, this could be controversial here, but everything that you're talking about in regards to education being taken over, what we discussed about earlier about, say, the financial and currency markets, whatever being taken over, politics being manipulated, the judicial system being corrupted, all these things, you can read about this. And there's something that's called the Protocols from the Learned Elders of Zion. And a lot of people will say, hey, that's anti-Semitic and you're a Jew hater and on and on and on. All I can offer is that no, I'm not personally in any way, but when I read those things, I see it's a plan that's been out there for a long time, and they spell it out. They didn't want me to read it. They didn't think that people like me were going to have access to it. Somebody back in the early, late 1800s was able to get a copy of it and put it out. It's been discredited, it's been called a forgery, and it's been, this has been debunked and on and on and on. But all you got to do is read through a couple pages and you realize, my God, this is happening, or this has happened, or we're in the middle of this. It's right there.
Well, that's their favorite thing to do, to discredit anything that's credible. Call it a conspiracy theory, say that it's been debunked, fact check it. That's their
with
favorite thing to
opinion
do.
pieces. They fact check it with opinion pieces.
Yeah,
Not even like
yeah.
actual. I know. Go ahead.
Candace Owens is going to wipe these mofos out, let me tell you. Between her and all the other conservatives standing up and fighting for the freedom of speech, because they are violating our Constitution. And you can tell me that they're a private company all you want, but when a private company becomes so influential that it is now without a border, like it's worldwide, and it has enough influence to change the outcome of an election or completely silence our president and let a presidential candidate have more reach than he does, they need to be held to the same standard that we are going to hold a government entity to.
Well, we're going to have to change the system. That's the deal. We can't. The system that's in place right now is so corrupt, and it's got so much control that it's almost like you have to create a parallel system to replace.
Well, it is going to fail. It is going to crumble. We see it happening right now, currently. You see the grasp for power and the desperation that's happening right now with our government and our two-party system. You see the grasping for straws all over the world with different countries. So you see everything crumbling. That we've already had dollars crash. George Soros was responsible for that. And we're going to see that here with the pandemic. I say pandemic because it was a planned event. So everything is falling. And like a phoenix from the ashes, we are going to rise, and we are going to be stronger as a whole, as a planet. I don't feel like we're going to have borders anymore. I do feel like we're going to be way more united, because there's going to be more of a global consciousness going on. We are having a shift, and that is something that is so powerful that it is forcing all of these people to have to really examine themselves and look at their choices. You have people that are not wanting to do that work and to put in the hours that it takes to be able to look at yourself and figure out like what the heck's going on with me, why am I acting this way? And it's much easier for them to go complain and riot and blame everyone in the street. So the polarization that's happening right now is part of that shift that's occurring. And everybody, I feel, on both sides, I don't care who your mama is or what you believe, like everyone on both sides feels that the government is failing, the system we have in place is failing, and we need something new. We need something that's going to accommodate our new world and the growth of our population and the way that we have moved towards advancements in our society as a whole than what it was 200 years ago, 300 years ago, 50 years ago even.
Well, that's the start of
Well,
it, you know.
I think that can be.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead. I was going to say, I think that can be dangerous too, because we have really what I believe is the perfect document, and that's the Constitution. And when that was formed 244 years ago, or whenever that was, it was based on over 700 years of civilization strife in efforts to get away from tyranny. And it was really, I think, a divinely inspired document. The founding didn't just pull it out of the air, you know, and go, hey, you know, what do you think of this? They really, really worked on that. And it wasn't perfect. And, you know, because we're humans, we're not perfect. Humans aren't perfect. But like Rob suggested, we have amendments, we can fix things. But there's a lot of people, and where I'm talking about why it's dangerous. They want to just throw it out. Oh, it's an old antiquated document. You know, it doesn't work in this modern age, and on and on and on. Well, no, we haven't, it's been usurped. We haven't been using it. Our government officials have fucked it up, right? By not using it and making new laws and new rules and new things in the deep state, you know, where there's people who aren't elected and they're just coming up with all these ideas, and you know, we don't have any control over them. That stuff has to go away. I totally agree with you in that regard, but I want to just caution, we need to get back to a constitutional republic. And
yeah, when I say government, I don't mean the Constitution. I literally mean the two-party system and the corruption that inevitably falls into place with that type of system. The Constitution is a thing of beauty, and I actually have a copy of it I hang on my wall.
Well, absolutely. If they were talking about a world where everybody came together, where it was free and fair, that would be something that a lot of people could get behind. If they were pushing an agenda that was, let's say they wanted everybody to be one big, you know, basically the Earth Union, and everybody was still a country, but we all worked in the same harmonious way, and it was free and fair, I would get behind that. But they're not going to do that, because what it is it comes down to greed, corruption, and vying for power. So knowing these things, and these are all, you know, this is what man is. We have a lot of flaws. Nobody's perfect. And a lot of this control with the mind started with MK Ultra in the 50s and 60s, right after World War II, and Project Paperclip. I mean, we could go back. But what really started to push this agenda was the first Bush. After that, now these different families, well, let's call them out: the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Bushes, the Clintons, the DuPonts, and the Oppenheimers. Those are the families that you have to watch out for. Okay, everything stems from their money and their reign of terror over. I mean, if you go back, and not to give you a history lesson, but before World War II, there was the League of Nations. The League of Nations was owned by the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds, but America was literally creating this isolationism that was inside of its borders, that they didn't want anything to do with anybody. So these people knew that they couldn't take the world without America. So what did they do? The Bushes started funding Hitler, which they actually got tried on war crimes for. They funded Hitler to destroy all of Europe. So America would have to come in. And then at that point, with Rothschild and Rockefeller money, yet again, they created the United Nations. If you look at the United Nations literal constitution, there's an amendment, I think it's Amendment 14, that says you don't mean anything, and they can take whatever they want from you whenever they want, and your rights and liberties are at bay because they say so. They could take anything away from you that they want. So this United Nations is what really needs to be broken down,
Yeah.
because this is where it all stems from. And these foundations, like the Bush Foundation, the Clinton Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, the the Gates Foundation, and NIH with Fauci, they're the ones who made the coronavirus in North Carolina and gave it to China in 2017 with $3.5 million, and in 2019 they gave them another 7 million. So not only that, they've come out on record in 2017 and said, well, or what was it, 2000? Yeah, 2015. I apologize and said, well, President Trump's going to have to deal with a pandemic. They're literally telling you what they're going to do before they do it. We just have to wisen up and really
Yeah.
take the world by the balls and say, no, you're not. You're not going to do that.
Okay, so I have a question for both you guys. So what do we do in this country? I mean, we have a totally ignorant population. Yeah, a lot of people are waking up, but we have a completely ignorant population when it comes to probably 99% of what we're talking about here. And we have people that are easily manipulated. I mean, look at how easily everybody has fallen into lockstep with the masks, and they're
Yeah.
going to do the same thing with the vaccination. I mean, what can we do?
Well, in my opinion, I feel like we need to unite together as the people that are awoke and ban and spread the information that we have that helped awaken us to the masses that are still asleep. So we need to unite and fight together. And honestly, using that manipulation and the brainwashing tactics would honestly benefit us for what we're trying to do. So knowing that they're already malleable and they are easily influenced, we can use the same tactics against them.
Yeah, I don't know. I have a bit of a problem with that because we have no rights to manipulate other people. And that's really a form of manipulation.
By uniting together and spreading the information. I'm not meaning to use the tactics in a malicious way. I'm meaning the way that they spread their information, because if you look at it, they have a very good tactic for spreading information. They bombard you with media, they bombard you with music, they bombard you with social media, and they bombard you with people around you. So if we use those same tactics so that the information has a fair chance to getting to everybody, I don't see anything wrong with that.
Personally, I don't think that it's going to go down like that. I think in the next 5 to 10 years, it's going to end up being a war of some sort, whether it be on this soil or somewhere else. And I'm not wanting that, but I believe that from this war, eyes will be opened. When people start to die at a mass rate, others will they have it's almost like people won't realize what's going on until it's forcefully shoved in their face, until
Yeah.
they see what their consequences are for their actions. Because when you're growing up and you go to touch the stove, you'll keep doing it until you get burned. And then when you
Mm-hmm.
get burned, you'll pull your hand back and say, hot, that's hot. And I feel that that's the way that sometimes some stubborn people will have to see that to fully grasp what we're trying to achieve. And hopefully they are forgiven in the afterlife and they get to go wherever they need to go for whatever their religion dictates. And I just think it's going to come to a head, and that's going to be the end of it. And once that head happens, it'll open up the eyes of a lot of people. But
Yeah,
even then, there'll still be some that are against it anyway, just because they
it
can be.
really does come down to a fight between the darkness and the light, you know, satanic forces or whatever you want to call them, and God. And
Absolutely.
that's where we're at. And there's been a lot written about the so-called, I don't know if you want to call them end times, but say the second coming, or but totally a changeover, a big changeover. And I agree with Amber about the age of Aquarius and the energy changes and the shifts, and a lot of that has to do with where our solar system is right now. I mean, our solar system is moving through the cosmos at a huge rate. Our sun is dragging all of our planets along with it on this huge giant cycle that it goes on, and we're being affected by energies that maybe we've never been affected by before, and it's supposedly is having an enlightening effect on mankind and this planet, and it's really a amazing time to be alive.
Hmm. Yeah, there's going to be 3 days of clarity, is what they're calling it. Sorry, Kathleen.
Oh, that's okay. Sorry. But so you're saying that because we're moving through a certain part of the solar system or a solar system, that it has a higher frequency in itself. So that's affecting us, just like if we were getting some sort of, frequency treatment. I guess the planet's getting a frequency treatment.
Yeah,
And
it's all part of a cycle. You know, it's a
Hmm.
that happens and has happened probably before. I mean, the history of our planet, and the history of our solar system, and the history of mankind is there's a lot more than what we've been told about. There's a lot more, and just from an energy perspective, there's so much that everything affects everything else, and we're really all really literally tied together on an
Yep.
energy level.
and
Yes,
that
we
would be
are.
just ultimately that if we can all stay calm and keep in a good frequency vibration, we'll just have less really to purge because no matter what, the frequency as it raises um, is a clear, pure source. And so then
Yep.
that frequency moves through your body and then, you it can be updated and I believe if you believe it, you can repair your DNA, fairly easily and get it to your divine blueprint. At least keep moving in that direction, let that frequency and energy. Then you won't be out in the streets foaming at the mouth, committing crimes like the BLM Antifa people that are so easily corrupted, easily manipulated. Of course, I like to talk about the mind control aspect of it, and the governmental, nano, DARPA, programmable mind control nanotechnology. That's all happening. And I'm really convinced, and I'm going to go all over the map here, but I'm really convinced that the solar radiation management, the directly spraying of chemicals in front of the sun to block the sun, is to degrade our ability to have vitamin D, which will make us sicker, faster, easier, breaks our immune system down so we can be more easily controlled. Um, but also, too, the whole COVID is really depending on your vitamin D levels, a lot of the vitamin D. And so I think that all of it's tying in together, and that these globalists, these banksters, these Pharisees, whatever you want to call them, the Rothschilds, the Khazarians, the fake Jews, the names you think of, but these people are supposedly in a last ditch effort to control humanity and get America under control. And they think that they could come in and, I guess, create heinous voter fraud and get away with it, I guess. And, from the socialist liberals in our town, they're okay with it. People are okay with this fraud. They're okay with acting this way, being justified to harass people because they want to hold a Trump flag or squish you down. It's all part of the agenda. So we're all here today because we've got a lot to share about the truth. We've got Rob. He's got full spectrum universe here in the Global Enlightenment Radio Network. And then we've got Amber Rose. She's got broad topics. And of course, I'm Kathleen Fitzgerald. This is Pat Price, who's going to be on the show here now and then. He's a good co-host. I know so
And
much.
I'm just a nobody, by the way. I don't have any title or credentials that I, can put out there, but
A deep researcher, like that's what the title is called, Deep Divers. And that came from Amber. She's got a lot of great ideas. So I took that and said, okay, that's what we'll call the show. People that spend more time than usual than other people to understand something a little bit more than other people so they can share more information. I think their hearts are really open and giving. They want these people here on the show, all three of you, and myself included, want to share important information to help us wake up. Because when we wake up, then our frequency raises and then we can be less controlled, right? That's kind of a goal for people. Anybody out there? There's lots of ways that you can make it so your energy field becomes strong and you can kind of become like a superhero out there where people don't bother you as much, or the frequencies can't get in there and drive you to do things. You know how many people out there don't know why they're mad? You don't know why you're depressed. In fact, you may not even know you're depressed. Why do you think a certain way? Why do you eat certain foods? Why do you think certain thoughts? Are really these thoughts your own? I mean, that's kind of where we're all kind of pointing to, is that there's a massive mind control operation going on. Um, but according to some intel, there's a military operation of its own going on, and that there's a great awakening. And if we can keep our frequencies in a hopeful, powerful, motivational way, then we can help not only the planet get through this critical time, but humanity, because the globalists want to use the technology to try to control you, maybe even turn you into a Democrat. Did you know that this is a true story? I know a guy who has a friend. It's his sister, I think. Yeah, that's how it is. His sister's got a husband. He was conservative, say mostly a Republican. He went off meat and started eating soy, turned straight Democrat, went straight liberal. So I think it's on the GMOs too. I think it's on the soy. That's why I call it Soy Nation. That's why I call Blam Tifa Soy Nationals. I don't care if you think I'm a meanie for saying that. uh, Men should not eat soy. If you eat any soy, it should be fermented. So that's natto, miso,
Mm-hmm.
hey, those three only, everyone out there. Um, so we've kind of gone all around the horn. We know there's a massive mind control operation going on, but do you guys think at all that, do you support the theory that um, there is a great awakening? It connects to the satanic ritual abuse of children to the higher levels, and that Trump is standing in the way, and that Trump is going to win ultimately, and Biden and his supporters are all going to be crying in the outhouse, in the back outhouse. What do you guys
Well,
think?
I mean, they were already crying and they won. So, but yes, I do believe all of that stuff. What about you, Rob?
I am definitely on board with that. And just to piggyback off what Kathleen was saying was there is a military effort to control people. One of the things that the military was looking into with the Central Intelligence Agency was looking into is that if there was a way to turn off this specific gene inside of you, which is classified the God gene. So it gives you your
Mm-hmm.
faith. Really, what that comes down to is your pineal gland, of course, and decalcifying your pineal gland is super important to connect with your soul and your higher power. But there is a a programming going on. And Kathleen is 100% right that it's the military that is trying, there's a military aspect of it that is trying to really dumb down people. And if you notice that after they've done these experiments to find this God gene, there's less of like an empathetic human in every person that is out there in the streets. The empathy has gone, the humanity has gone from them. It's almost like there's like a soulless vessel, like there's something dark behind the wheel, and they do these things that are just heinous and don't give a shit about it, which is wild to entertain. Now, I classify myself as the ultimate outsider. My audience is the outsiders because we don't think inside the box. We do our own research and think outside the box. And if there's one thing I could just instill on everybody is to do your own research. Be an outsider. Don't be an insider.
Well, when you talk about the military, I think now since Trump got in, that the military is trying to control us as like the bad aspect, the bad apples, the bad actors that are these Khazarians that want to, have humanity in the clutches because they're ruled by a satanic force and they're anti-God. So anything that's godly or godlike, they want to try to imitate it and take it over and then be the God Lord, whatever. Um, but since Trump got in, I think that a lot of people have had a lot of time to either choose the right side or they're not afraid to be on the right side and speak out. So that's kind of what I'm hoping. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's accurate. You know, we've been talking about energy and how we're all connected, and I guess it was last weekend. I went up to the Capitol here in the state of Washington for a Stop the Steal movement that was nationwide, and gosh, it was energizing. It was electric. I mean, people were just great. I mean, it was great. I spent several hours up there, and there was maybe 600, 700 people and a whole bunch of vehicles. And then I came down and met up with Kathleen in Vancouver. There was a Patriot Prayer group, and there was much smaller group, maybe a couple hundred or so. And same thing, same kind of electric energy, really good, positive. I spoke with a lot of different people at both places, and there was nobody that was whining or crying about Trump losing or any of that kind of stuff. I mean, it was everybody knows what's going on, and it felt so good. It really did.
There wasn't anything the equivalent to a liberal meltdown, you mean? Which, yeah,
just,
I mean, oh, sorry, go ahead.
just the opposite.
Yeah, it's really funny because right now they're trying to say that we are crying and whining and just doing meltdowns. Where are all the videos of Republicans and conservatives crying and screaming and acting like complete a-holes?
Yeah,
I want to see them.
used some of the video and some of the photographs of themselves from 2016 and said,
I know.
yeah, they were doing it.
Gosh. And the fact that the left can't meme, can we talk about that for a minute? How they have like no sense of humor. Antifa was attacking me. Okay, they attack me periodically because I call them Anquifa. I'm not very nice, but like I have personal reasons for that, which I get into on my channel, Broad Topics. If you guys want to follow me on that, I am on Facebook at Broad Topics, and then I just started a YouTube channel for Broad Topics, and I will be starting a podcast on iHeartRadio, so be on the lookout for that. But I go into depth about my personal experience with Anquifa up in Seattle and Portland and everything in that nature. But they literally have no sense of humor and they get upset about everything. And then you look at the rights memes and they're golden. Like there's this meme I saw earlier about Antifa, and it was this guy dressed all fancy and stuff, like looking like a badass rocker, fit and just like hair on point, like a nice leather outfit. And then there's a guy that's like homely looking with messed up hair, dirty, like trying to look sexy in like a leather rock outfit, you know, and it's just like pulled off completely wrong. And it's like what Antifa thinks they look like, what Antifa really looks like. And it was hilarious. Like I almost spit my coffee out. Like I read it for a second and I was like, oh man, that's funny. And I had posted it and I got a 24-hour ban today on my Facebook because of it.
Oh no.
So that's great. But it was hashtag worth it. You know what I mean? It was just hilarious. But somebody said I was bullying.
Crazy. Yeah. I'm off of not YouTube, Facebook. I can't even get on there. They won't even let me on there. And it's not because I've been doing anything or saying anything about anybody. For the last few years, just posted things that I found informational and just would put them on there. And maybe I'd put a sentence or two about, hey, check this out or whatever. And they just got tired of me doing that, I guess. And I can't get on there. Everything's gone. And that's okay. I don't care about Facebook anyway. It sucks.
Yeah, it's those awesome fact checkers that know absolutely everything without doing any research. Did you know that they were trying to disprove the Hunter Biden scandal with something that happened like 5 years ago?
Crazy.
It's absolutely insane.
It's definitely wild. And I want to put this out there for people too, is that we're still working and doing things to help change this elections and this process. And if there's anybody who wants to get involved at this point, they can email me at robyox2525@gmail.com. We need as many patriots as we possibly can to make this movement move forward. And we're doing things to help. Also, funding from people as well. We'll get into that once you email me if that's something you'd like to do. But I am still in motion and putting groups together and specific areas to fight against this. So if there's anybody who wants to take part and help us, feel free to email me because the work is still yet to be done. And I have something for everybody to do if that's the case. If you feel like you want to be a part of this.
Can you state your email one more time?
It's ROBYOX2525@gmail.com.
Yeah, so I've got a lot of people that I met at the flag wavings that actually went to Washington, D.C. to the Mega Million
March.
Rally. Yeah. So I guess that went pretty well. There was a lot of Proud Boys. It prompted me to even start a new Twitter account. So I did that. And it's kind of funny. I'll go ahead and say it. It's called Proud Moms.
Yeah. I've been banned off Twitter. Are you kidding me?
It's like,
I've been banned since like the beginning of 2020.
yeah, it's called Proud Moms. We're proud of the Proud Boys and the Patriot Prayers. And it'll say
That's awesome.
it's waiting for you when you get home off the streets, boys. Love you, Mom. That's kind of.
Hey, I want
Maybe
some.
we'll do like the wall of moms for Portland.
We're proud of you out there, supporting the Patriots. Proud moms of America, So if anybody wants to be a proud mom, and if you want to join, maybe we can get something going. And when you need patriots, maybe they can come and, give you some security for your event. Then you can just, cook them a roast and some biscuits or something.
That's actually my specialty. Roast and biscuits.
I know. Wouldn't that be a great thing? All of a sudden, it just like popped up all over Proud Moms, because I noticed that Antifa BLM hate the Proud Boys because they stand up to them. They don't let them, And I saw a lot of things going on, and I'm going to go off on it because we've got some time.
You just made me think of something. I don't mean to interrupt you, but
So people are just walking, and some guy sticks up for somebody, and he's just out there by himself, a middle-aged man, and He's got to fight them off, and they kind of scurry back, and then they start coming at him from behind like hyenas or something and nipping at the heels. And then some big black block, comes around and sucker punches him a hard, left or a hard right, from the back
Mhm.
around and knocks him down. That seems to be, so watch out, people. That's what they've been trained to do. Some of the tactics are directly from some Muslim war, training. It's not good stuff. This sucker punching thing, where they're knocking people down and they're smashing their heads and knocking their teeth out, is, I'm sure they're wearing something on their knuckles, and then they come around and from behind and do a far sucker punch. So you got
Yeah, for the weight.
you don't let them get on around there behind you. I noticed that seems to be a tactic that they're using.
Well, and if you fall on the ground, then they start stomping on your head or kicking you in the face or that kind of thing. So it's like chicken shit. It's real chicken shit tactics. They won't take you face on.
Yeah, they're using a lot of guerrilla war tactics.
Yeah, and you got to be careful. I mean, they're highly trained on what they can do, the kind of the guerrilla warfare that they can get away with. And then you think, oh, I can just take a baseball bat. And then if you raise it up, and act like you're going to come down, that could be construed as a felony. That could be construed as a lethal weapon. It's a tough one, but people are going to have to start defending themselves more and more. Imagine this group coming through any one of your towns, and it's not safe anymore from then on. Once they show up, it's not safe anymore to walk down the street, because you're going to hassle. You have to show them their hand sign or whatever to become, one of them, or so that you're supportive of this Black Lives Matter Antifa type of mind control programming base behavior that we're seeing. So I don't know how you guys feel about that, but it seems like more and more people need to take basic combat training or buy a weapon, get some ammo if you can, and learn how to use it. It's pretty critical.
Yeah, in Denmark, I actually watched a video of a guy who lives in Denmark and kind of went off the grid after all this happened, where Antifa went over there and this was before it started to happen here. They went over there and they were doing the exact same thing that is happening here. And one of the things that he said that really stuck out to me was that they got Antifa out of their country by essentially bullying them and making fun of them because they just could not laugh and make fun of themselves. They get really upset and they cry, essentially. That's what he kept saying, was that they're a bunch of little crybabies. And it would be really interesting to me to see if potentially that would also work here.
Yeah, we could just get some pretty, tough, proud moms. A real kick-ass group of moms that are just really sick and tired of the bullies. I mean, a groups together, proud Jews. How about, I don't know, college, groups of college kids that are trained in martial arts.
Well, essentially what's kind of going on right now is that the conservative younger kids are from liberal parents. And we were talking about this the other night, was that it's really basic knowledge that teenagers tend to rebel against their parents. So if we're having a bunch of young teenage TikTokers, because this is how I found all this out, was on TikTok, they are essentially rebelling against their parents and their liberal views and becoming more conservative. So they were essentially trying to build a liberal army by brainwashing and all of that. And it worked for one generation, but I think they forgot one crucial thing is that kids tend to rebel against their parents. So now they're also with facing the red pill movement across the country, and the Black Sis by Candace Owens and all of that kind of stuff, the hashtag walk away. They're also facing a new generation of rebellious liberal children that are turning conservative, and it's honestly quite humorous in my opinion. It backfired.
Yeah, there's a lot to that because I know they're counting on all these young liberals to be voting Democratic. And I think that's, the basic fraud is that, oh yeah, just all of a sudden there was all these millions of Democrat votes that voted for Biden. Biden just got more votes. And then Antifa's like, oh, it's because we went out and rioted. BLM, we went out and rioted is because, it's our good efforts, our criminal activities. It's because, of all that. And everybody wants to jump on there and act like they're the ones that are responsible for this change. It's really no change. It's just a change of, better tactics used on more people to do the Satan's bidding, basically. Using better scientific equipment, to get people to do what they want them to do. That's what I think.
Well,
okay, so it's 3:42.
Can I say one more thing before we finish? I just want to say one thing.
7 minutes. Yes, go ahead, Rob.
This is the 21st century in the sense that this is 21st century warfare. So basically, knowledge is everything, and empowering people. I don't believe in the violent aspect of it. I believe in taking over the intelligence side of it. And I believe that by issuing these networks where we pass this information along, information is key. Facts are key. Anytime that we're going to basically take on another voting situation, information is what needs to be passed. Violence only gets you so far to get past these obstacles that we have to get past. That's why creating these networks of information are so important to the cause right now. Violence begets violence. We get that. But I believe in this time, information is key, and that is the next wave and the next bullets, shall we say, in this war is that information and having networks to pass it along to change the minds of many people. Because you could beat the hell out of somebody, but changing his mind will last forever and create more like a ripple in the wave of time, because he can teach one, he can teach one, he can teach one.
Anybody want to chime in on? Go ahead.
It just goes back to what I was saying earlier, that this is going to be fought digitally, and we are digital warriors. And I feel like he was really contributed to us having as much of a mass on social media and online as we do now. War in 21st century is just adaptive to what's going on. You can't fight a war the same way you did 200 years ago.
Exactly.
Well, I think, though, after being a part of the new paper here, the Skamania Observer, that going back to written word and circulating it is really important. And that if we can get away from as much of the digital as possible in our daily lives, I know that we'll be much better off, more healthier, of course, because it'll have less of that frequency, to manipulate us. Because remember, it's all information. So that's what I think. And, I want to just thank everybody for coming on, because we know there was some voter fraud, deep voter fraud. So let's, we've got a few minutes, take a couple minutes, each one of you, and start with Rob, and give us what you think, what you're seeing, what you think's going to happen, and your outcome, and then we'll just go around the table here.
What's going to happen is they're going to overturn the election. It's going to go to the Supreme Court. There's one of two things that can happen. They're either going to give it to Trump via the Supreme Court itself, or a vote in the House. either way, Trump is going to end up exposing this fraud, and he is going to win the election. What comes after that is yet to be told. It'll probably be a lot of fighting and a lot of people take it to the streets and trying to burn things down. The best thing I can tell everybody to do is prepare, get yourself storable food and water, and make sure that you're able to survive through at least a month of, not being able to go outside.
How about you?
Yeah, oh, sorry. I agree with everything that he just said. I'm just really hoping to encourage everybody to spread the word. Don't be afraid to share your opinion. Don't let people silence you. Don't let people make you second guess yourself. Have faith that what is meant to be is going to happen, and have faith that the light will prevail over the darkness, and that love is stronger than hate and division.
Yeah, both of you sound great with your final parting comments. One thing I'd like to add, Kathleen mentioned this new newspaper that we have in our community, and it's been an amazing chance for us to get things in print media that we wouldn't normally be able to get out there. I mean, yeah, we can get on social media and put things out there, but I've contributed a lot, and they've put most of it in there. It's been really good. I've considered maybe even doing what they used to do years ago, pamphleteering, making up pamphlets and passing them out to people. Because unfortunately, as we've seen with digital media or social media, there's so much control right now. And, Rob had mentioned, like Parler and different platforms like that. And I think that's great. And I believe getting together with like-minded people on those platforms that aren't being censored is a super important thing to do, along with what Amber suggested, which is get on the platforms where, you might be fighting with words back and forth. Something like Parler, which I'm fairly new to, it's great because I can share, say with Rob, something that maybe he didn't know, and then he can go and look somewhere else and vice versa. And everything that we learn, we can impart to our family, our friends, our neighbors, and whatnot. So I think it's important to be on both types of platforms, and try to get things out there that aren't digitally done as well. Just keep up the good work, guys.
Yeah, back to you guys for this show. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It was an honor to be here, and I hope to be working with you guys more in the future. Absolutely.
Well, thanks. You guys definitely knew a lot more about the whole election than I did. I've been following the Patriots around, when going to Washington, D.C., and I would encourage everybody to find your local Patriot group in your area, in your town. Go, if there isn't one, go to your sheriff and talk with him about wanting to get together with fellow patriots. He might have a program. There are reserve programs that certain sheriffs have if they've got the funding, where you can go and get the training and be a reserve sheriff, and then you can be next in line for a position. That's always good. Find your a constitutional sheriff, if you don't have one in your area. Talk and get meetup groups with fellow patriots. If you are unfeeling not safe, it's always good to get some training and some sort of self-defense. Stock up. We're seeing some shelves and things get a little bit bare. So if you don't like those lines, you might want to avoid the lines. You might want to get some of the things that you use a lot and now, just to be conservative. So just stay safe out there, everybody, and keep digging deep. Check in. Rob's got the show here, Full Spectrum Universe. He's on many of the host shows on the network. The Global Enlightenment Radio Network is here. It's going 24/7, 365 all the time. Great people on the show. Check out Broad Topics and Full Spectrum Universe. This is Kathleen Fitzgerald signing out. We'll see you around the horn next Sunday at 2 Pacific Standard Time. Take care, everybody. God bless.